Well, hi there, friend. Now, I hear pray tell from my lovely wife that you been getting pretty busy lately, huh? Oh, why, yes, it would seem I'm hitting the books rather hard as of late. Hello, old friend. Oh, I'd say you've been hitting something pretty hard there, partner. Yeah, no, my poor, defenseless little peach. She told me you done accosted her, done attacked her, done ripped off her garments, and raped her. What? Excuse me? No, my good sir, I tell you, I've never so much as a wayward glance at your wife, never so much as touched your wife, let alone, what is the word you used? Rape, is it? No, goodness, no. Nah, Tom Sarn, I had enough of your lies. My poor wife was raped by you, and I will not take it, no sir. Challenge you to a duel. Duel to the death. Huh? Oh, well, my word. Well, though you are severely mistaken, you have left me no choice but to defend my honor. Oh, yes, the handsome, well-spoken man did rape me, but they are both assholes.
The penalty for bearing false witness is that you are to be burned alive.
I will not be silent.
Yeah, so as you've probably guessed, today we are doing The Last Duel. So The Last Duel came out this year, 2021. This was one that I wasn't particularly excited to go see. Admittedly, when it comes to the casting and all that, as I'll go over in a second, it's kind of hard to say no to this strong of a cast. Plus, the director is very well known, so I didn't think this movie was going to be quite as good as it ended up being, but here we are. So to go from the top down, The Last Duel is directed by Ridley Scott. If you don't know that name, then you're probably not like an avid film goer and consumer / connoisseur. He's done some of the biggest hits, like Alien. Yeah, that was him. He directed that shit back in the day. Blade Runner, the OG, that was also him. He directed that shit. Now granted, some of his more modern stuff has been kind of mixed reception, but with this film now, The Last Duel, it's clear that he hasn't lost all of his touch. I think he still got it, and he did a very good job with this. Now, I've heard talk of like, oh, this film is just Oscar baiting and all that, but I don't think I would go that far. Maybe, I don't know if this is a hot take or not. The reviews seem to be really positive for this film, but yeah, I'll go in with my review unclouded by other people's reviews that I have not seen. So as I said, Last Duel is directed by Ridley Scott, and when I say like loaded cast, I mean we got Adam Driver, okay? Who, if you don't know Adam Driver, I mean, again, I'm gonna kind of touch on all these names and not gonna delve too much into their career, only because these guys are like some of the biggest. They're like household names, and if you don't know them, a simple Google search will show you some information. But if you're curious enough to the point where you're looking at this, like half of the trailer is being like, oh, look who's in this. Oh, he's in this too. So yeah, Adam Driver's in this. We have Matt Damon is in this, okay? We have Ben Affleck is in this, all right? And then we have a gal that I'm seeing, maybe it's that I didn't realize how much of I'd already seen in the wild per se, but Jodie Comer, or Comer, I think it's Jodie Comer. Yeah, they're all great in this film, but when I tell you she rocks the house with her performance. It's very captivating for sure, in a way that I'll delve into in a minute. But yeah, she was great in this too. Now, I mean, most notably on my channel, you would know her when I touched on her in the review of Free Guy. But, I mean, she's been in stuff before, so... Of course, there's other actors in here, too, you might recognize, but you'll see some familiar faces. But overall, the whole film is basically... Now, normally it says based on a true story, but, like, this just says a true story. So, I have not done extensive research to find out. I am sure that they did not painstakingly recreate everything scene by scene. You gotta get some drama in there. But basically, it's two old friends. One who's, like, this ruggish knight, but he's just like a guy that's been trying to fight for king and country for years and years, and just, you know, all that he asks for is his land, his wife, and to like live and honor the king and live and die by the king and all that. Then you have another guy who comes in here. He's this like noble squire, more on the royalty and educated side of things, and you know, he's trying to of course, his career and his life and all this, he's a bit of a ladies' man, if you know what I mean. But he's on this side over here, kind of close friends with some dukes and duchesses and all this. But you got these two guys, and then, you know, the former over here, the knight, basically gets married, and then a certain point into that marriage, she comes forward and says, hey, so your friend, the guy who's the squire, has accosted me and then raped me. And of course the squire is like, I did no such thing. But of course to his confidants, he's like, well, I would hardly call it rape. I mean, it was destined. I've never felt love like this. And so ensues a very historic moment where normally, as many people do, unfortunately to this day, while she could normally keep quiet and let things go about his business, she's like, no, I'm tired of this. This injustice happens. It's entirely too often. What has happened to me is not only a personal affront, but it's a societal atrocity. I cannot let this stand. And so begins this dramatic tale of that story, the Ridley Scott way, and to be made for modern film audiences. I think it's a very well done film, and it surprised me with how much I liked it and how good it ended up being for me. I think as I was like getting into it, I felt it had a bit of a slow start as the movie was progressing, but as more time went on, as the film got deeper and deeper, I was into it. They got me. I was there. I was here for that film, and I enjoyed it more and more as the film went on, which is kind of like bittersweet, but I'll take it. They kind of ramped it up. It comes at you with a semi-unique narrative, by having basically like 3 points to a story, each being told from their points. You can kind of compare and contrast, and then you finally get the truth of the matter. And then you're like, oh, I see. And it has some very heavy parallels to modern society, even. Overall, if I didn't touch on this too much already, fantastic performances throughout. I mean, you got a killer cast here, really. None of these actors I've ever really had any major gripes with. And Matt Damon is good in just about everything that he does. And Adam Driver is also a wonderful man. Like I said, I could go on and on about their capability and their talents, but I will say, worthy of note, what Jodie Comer managed to do in this film is something that I was very surprised. I've seen a great number of films across a wide range of genres. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, the fantastic, the depraved, the terrible. So you can imagine, someone in my position, both in film and television, I have seen my fair share of rape scenes. And they're always, you know, they're never great. I mean, never. It's depiction of sexual assault. It can be very triggering for some people, similar to suicidal bits in film and television, and it's just never like it's never a joy to watch, period. And usually you're just never, it just happens, and you're like, well, this is unfortunate, it's happening, here we are, okay, that's terrible, moving on. I don't know if it was because I was a full tall boy of truly into this movie, or if I was just in my feels that night, but when I went to go see this, and like the actual rape scene is shown, I was almost brought to tears. Never has a scene like this, never has a scene of sexual assault in a film been so emotional. I hesitate to use the word well portrayed, because that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like, oh, good job on the rape. I'm like, no, not at all. The actors who engage in it, and especially Jodie, like seeing this woman who's acting as the woman who was raped back, it all just felt just dirty and too real, and without being overly sexually gratuitous, just the emotion, it was just some intense shit, man. And it's not something that I would ever go out of my way to see again. I mean, I'm gonna see the film again, obviously, but it's just like, not only did it make me feel uncomfortable, which is the point, but I felt for her. The emotion from that scene just really carries over, and I think Jodie did a tragically wonderful job of bringing that through. So I've never experienced that in a film before, that emotional connection to something so terrible happening in that sense. I've had emotional connections to film and television before, but I've never gotten that emotional during a scene of rape and sexual assault. So they did something right, unfortunately. This is a minor complaint that I've listed about period pieces before. No, not everybody can be as meticulous as Robert Eggers, but like I've come around to liking The Witch, and I love The Lighthouse a lot because, in addition to many other reasons, they're very period authentic with both their attire and their dialogue and dialect. Now I get it. You gotta adapt a tale of this type to appeal and be more well received to a modern audience. I understand that. And they kind of have like ye old like dialect here and there. Definitely they don't all have accents for sure. Some of them do, and it makes sense. But like, I don't know. It's like, it's still, you can tell the for lack of a better term, the script in this film has been very colonized. Like, you can tell it's not very period authentic dialogue and dialect. So I get it. I will say now, the makeup, wardrobe, costuming, and all that, the suits of armor, the dresses the gals wore, it's not to the level of, like, again, Eggers films or even like Emma or another movie such as that, but for what they were doing and what they did, and I'm sure the massive budget they had, everything else, surroundings, the world, the clothing, it was all very period authentic, so I liked that. Good job there. There is a very good message in the film. Obviously, the whole film, while they market it as this is the last duel, it's a fight between two big actors you like on screen, the whole film is really about systemic misogyny. And it's not as preachy as Zootopia was with their message. Again, good message, but they're not converting any racists over here. Similar thing here. There was a little bit of dialogue, especially towards the scenes that involve a courtroom and all that, where it's a little bit on the nose with what they're saying. It's probably accurate for the time as well, because they're very biased and between religion and just misogynistic persecution of women back then. Like, it's period authentic in that sense, but you know, you want to be able to get your messages across without having them be too on the nose or preachy. And Last Duel was not preachy, but little on the nose here and there, but still a message that needs to be out there, put out there. Apparently, why they made Promising Young Woman is because nobody gets it still, is that like sexual assault is a thing that's been happening for centuries, for years and years, and it's still happening to this day. And we have almost the exact situation as in this movie still happening to this day, where someone's like raped and tries to come forward, and of course they're like, oh, but you know, did it really happen? Well, did you enjoy it? Well, how were you dressed? It's like, no, a fucking rape is rape. Like, there's no two ways about it. Granted, there's very small percentage of situations where maybe there's a mistrial or there's like a misaccusation, but like 9 times out of 10 it happened. The biggest thing I loved about this film was the good directing and cinematography for sure. Everything felt very gray and dark and Arthurian, and like, I love a good rated R medieval story at all. Like, that's why it's kind of why I miss Game of Thrones, but I will say this was a good like rated R piece, both in terms of content and thematic material. But I will say what I loved about this, it's been a minute since I've had a good, solid, well done fucking R-rated sword fight. And I don't mean like, oh, stabby stab. I mean, yeah, I do mean stabby. I kind of mean that, but like, just a good, just like, yeah, Game of Thrones, like Brienne versus Tarth-esque fight, where you just have like the cleaning of swords and punches being thrown and two people duking it out and just trying to fucking survive. Like, this is like adrenaline pumping, like mono, like who's gonna come out on top, and coupled with the well acted and well done drama and story, all culminating in this ultimate like duel of two people. Like, chef's kiss. Great duel, like great fight overall, and that's no spoiler. Like, you know there's gonna be a fight, and God, was it good? In my opinion, it was good. But I'll leave it at that. I'll wind down before I get too far into more prattling on. Last thing I can think of in terms of just a general note, good score. I don't recall any songs or any like pieces of music like really shining above the rest in terms of like, oh, this score is so standout that I'm like, you know, it's not like Mad Max Fury Road where like the entire soundtrack is like a banger. But I mean, it fits. Again, good job. I really loved the sound design in this film. Granted, in the theater that I went to, they had the volume cranked all the way up, so I heard every word everybody said, and the sound of swords hitting each other was almost deafening. But yeah, good sound mixing, sound design, again, especially in the fight, but of course throughout the entirety of the film. It's an accomplishment where if I put myself into the shoes of an average film goer and look at this as not as a action movie, but as what it is, a period drama, the fact that it could retain my attention the way that it did and engage me so well, I feel like it would also maintain the attention span of maybe not your average film watcher, but maybe your above average film watcher, if I had to say. I mean, it's hard to gauge people's interests in these kinds of things, but I think it's a movie worth watching for sure. And it's a movie that's, it's a compelling drama at the end of the day, and that's what matters. Overall, I would give The Last Duel a low 4 out of 5. I'd say a low 4 out of 5 for sure. It's definitely not a perfect film. The film kind of gradually won me over, as the title suggests. Like, getting into the movie, I was like, oh, I thought this was the kind of movie I was going to see, and then it ended up being something different and something more different, and then just finishing off very well. So I mean, it gradually got me onto its side, but the fact that I didn't feel that way from start to finish, that kind of detracts. The dialogue is not period perfect, which isn't a huge detriment. That's not why the rating's not crazy going downhill, but it affects it because it takes a little bit out of it if, like, as I'm listening and watching, I'm like, oh, they just are kind of talking like they're just, most of them are just kind of talking to each other and all normal. Like, there's some, like, accent and dialect, so it's not the entirety of the film. And yeah, really, I don't have a lot of, like, detracting things to say about this film. Adapted, I would presume, fairly well from the source material. Well acted, directed, shot. It could have been better, which would have made it perfect, but for me, it's at least well above average and just below near perfect. I think it was a really great film. I'd say it's worth it in theaters if you're into this kind of thing. Like, if you're into a period authentic, like a period piece / drama with some little fight sequences here and there, but leading up to just a clash, a duel. I think the film has a little bit of everything for everybody. There's some very light levity here and there throughout, situational humor, but it's mostly a drama, and I think it was a well done drama. So Ridley Scott hasn't quite lost his touch just yet. Definitely worth a viewing. Go see it in theaters if you care to check it out that way. But in the meantime, thank you guys and gals so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next movie review that I do. And goodbye, travelers.